Hey survivors, it's Angie Atkinson, and today at QueenBeing.com, we're going to talk about exactly what a codependent is and how that relates to your narcissistic abuse. All right, so let's get started. My name is Angie Atkinson, and this channel is all about teaching you what I know to be true. You really can create the life you want. So I know it's kind of annoying when people do this, but it's kind of relevant for this particular discussion, okay? So I'm going to give you the word codependent from the dictionary, and I'm going to tell you the definition from the dictionary, okay? The definition is as an adjective, or the definition is of or relating to a relationship in which one person is physically or psychologically addicted as to alcohol or gambling, and the other person is psychologically dependent on the first person in some unhealthy way. Okay? Or as a noun, it is one who is codependent or in a codependent relationship. That's a really good definition, dictionary.com. So that's the dictionary definition. What is the definition as far as being involved with a narcissist? I think something really important to note regarding the codependent is that it cannot necessarily, a codependent is not just, a victim of a narcissist. The narcissist, him or herself, is also a codependent. And you're going to see that when I go through these symptoms, okay? So let me ask you, do you have a codependent personality? I know that there are other terms that are better used in this situation in 2017. Um, one of the things that I personally find to be a better term for what is sometimes referred to as codependent is empath, or in the case of a codependent, a broken empath. Okay, because an empath generally is someone who sees all of the feelings, or not even just sees, senses, feels the feelings of other people. And so, as you know, with someone who's a broken empath, it might be a little different. So obviously they throw the word codependency around like a softball or whatever, right, or a hacky sack, because you hear about codependent couples, codependent friends, caretakers, whatever. But you know is the word a bad word? Well, if you think about it, any couple in any healthy relationship can be sort of healthy, if they are, dependent on one another for different things. But in the case of codependency, in the context of narcissistic abuse, you know, um, one person is abusing the other person, and they are using this in a way that, this relationship in a very unhealthy way. So almost like a drug. Okay, so in any relationship where two people become so invested in one another that they can't independently function, that's when it becomes unhealthy. Now, is it unhealthy that a man who's been married to his wife for 57 years can't sleep as well without her next to him? I don't think so. But is it unhealthy if he can't get out of bed and feed himself breakfast if she's out of town? Maybe. You see what I'm saying? So, but your mood and your happiness and your identity entirely during a codependent relationship are defined by the other person. And in our case, it's the narcissist who would define us if we continue in that relationship. So, obviously, in any codependent relationship, there's usually one person who's more passive and can't make decisions for themselves, and then the more dominant personality that seems to get like a lot of reward and like an evil type of satisfaction or bonus benefit from the feelings of being in control of the whole situation and even making decisions for how the other person's going to go ahead and live. Okay, so what does that mean to you? Do you think that you might be a codependent person? Well, let's discuss the symptoms, shall we? Let me ask you a question. If you are in a relationship with someone, or if you have been, even if it's a parent-child relationship or a sister-brother, whatever, best friends, romantic, whatever, if you have been in a relationship with someone who you find yourself making all sacrifices for. And on the other side of the coin, that person makes no sacrifices. And in fact, you get nothing or very little in return. You know anybody like that? Now, if that kind of one sided pattern sounds like something that you personally have dealt with, well, listen, you're not alone. It's a pattern of abuse, and it's one that codependents find themselves in quite often. Okay? So there are lots of ways to change a codependent relationship, and to get your life, to get everything back on track. So the first thing you need to do is, to understand the meaning of the relationship. But right now, what I really want to focus on is what are the signs that you're dealing with a codependent situation. The first thing you need to know is that you don't need to have all of these signs and symptoms in order to be codependent, okay? But if you're looking for a way to kind of get a feel for whether or not you fall on the scale, let me go over these signs with you, okay? The first one is low self-esteem. So if you feel like you're not good enough, or you're constantly comparing yourselves to people, comparing yourself to someone around you, if you're looking at people of the opposite sex and thinking, oh my God, he or she is so much better looking than me, how can I even exist in this stupid world? That's signs of low self-esteem, okay? The tricky thing, though, is that while some people appear to think quite highly of themselves, that turns out to be a big old disguise, and those are usually the narcissists. They generally feel unlovable and inadequate. You may also carry around a big smile not because you're arrogant, but because you don't want to make anyone else feel sad or uncomfortable, okay? And again, we know, as people who have been there, I know as a person who's been there, that usually it hides a very sad self on the inside unless you heal yourself. So, you might have feelings of self-consciousness, feelings of guilt, feelings of shame, perfectionist issues. And of course, this comes along with low self-esteem because, of course, if everything could be perfect, you couldn't feel bad about yourself. So you'll have two different situations. You'll have the person who wants everything to appear perfect and can't leave the house without everything being perfect, or you'll have, on the other side, you'll have someone who's the opposite of perfect, who would be a codependent, someone who just doesn't even try to look perfect or be perfect and just feels really sad about the whole thing, right? Might even not put makeup on, or whatever people want to do or don't do, might not do what they would normally do for their grooming if they were not feeling so insecure about themselves. Then another symptom, people pleasing. Ugh. How many of us are people pleasers? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. See, I'm raising my hand here, people. Look, we all want to please people we love, people we care about. But when we're codependent, we really kind of think we don't have a choice in the matter. So, saying no to us feels like the biggest freaking, like we have a panic attack. You know what I'm saying? We can't. We can't do it. We think saying no is just a big old problem. If somebody asks us to do a favor for them and we don't want to do it, we have a hard time saying no at all, and we might even get physically ill if we try to say no. See, when we're an unhealthy codependent in our mind, the people pleasing can go so far out of our way to work that we actually sacrifice everything that we want and need in order for other people to have what they need. Now, don't get me wrong, if I'm in a situation where it's me eating or my kids eating, guarantee I'll be sacrificing, okay? But in general, if it's a matter of me dying or somebody else having seconds, well, it would be better for me not to die, right? And I know that's an extreme example, but people pleasing can literally lead you to give up your own well-being if you're not careful, okay? The next symptom is not having good boundaries, okay? So if you are in a situation where, you can't seem to draw the line of what's okay with you and what's not, because every time you do, somebody steps over it, you have poor boundaries. Specifically, boundaries meaning, the kind of literally kind of literally imaginary, an imaginary line that goes, kind of between you and what's acceptable to you and what's not. Okay, so like I've told you before with my marriage, my boundaries, my rule breakers or my deal breakers are don't hit me, don't hit my kids, or don't hurt my kids in general, and don't cheat on me. And if you can if you can follow those three rules, we're going to be okay, for the most part. So everybody's got to have boundaries, and sometimes they have to be more serious than just three deal breakers. You know what I'm saying? But when you teach people how to treat you, codependents typically aren't able to stand up for themselves. They might let their boundaries be crossed in every aspect, from their body to their financial assets to their stuff to feelings, needs, physical needs, all of these things. And of course, their boundaries in general are not strong. That's the point. And they feel responsible for other people's issues. They find themselves being closed down and withdrawn, and oh my gosh, it's so hard for other people to get close to them sometimes because, you know, they feel so upset. But then on the flip side of this, when a codependent becomes fed up, they may have such weak boundaries, and then suddenly, bam, the boundaries are rock solid and they're so rigid that the codependent person, it remains codependent because they're not even allowing themselves any room to breathe. See what I mean? It's interesting. So let's talk about reactivity. That's the next symptom. Okay. So what I mean by reactivity is, and this kind of, in my opinion, is part of being an empath. As an empath, we, as someone who feels the feelings of other people, we could literally walk into a room that we don't know what happened in before, and it can be, boom, it's time for everybody to be, it could be a problem. We could walk into a big old mess of emotion and drama and whatever, and feel every bit of it. We could react to it. And also, when we're not healthy, if someone says something we, disagree with, then, we have two choices. We can either believe it, or we can, let it go. Well, okay. And then there's a third choice, becoming defensive. And, if you're an empath who isn't able to take care of him or herself, energetically speaking, then you absorb the words of this person, and often the narcissist, because you have no boundary for not absorbing it. You can't, if you had a proper boundary in place, then you would recognize that it's really just the opinion of the other person and not literally a reflection of you if you don't agree with something someone says. Does that make sense? All right. All right, let's talk about the next thing, caretaking. Okay. This is another thing that can happen due to poor boundaries, and that is that if someone has a problem with you, you don't know what to do now. But if they have a problem that you can solve, well, by God, you'll be there. You'll give up everything you've got if it will help someone else. And of course, it's natural to want to help other people. That's just who we are as human beings, okay? But if you're codependent, you're going to start putting people other than your children or potential children in front of yourself. And, in my opinion, until your children are legal adults, you have a certain amount of responsibility to put them before yourself, or at least next to yourself, right? But as far as everyone else in the world goes, nope, you come before everybody else. And in a way, you do need to take care of yourself before you even take care of your children, because, it's like they say in the airplanes, if you don't take care of your own needs first, you might pass out trying to help someone else. And that's a literal interpretation, but it also kind of works hypothetically, don't you think? Anyway, but the point is that codependents will put other people ahead of themselves, and they find that they need to do that. They need to help someone, and if someone rejects their help, they feel very hurt, and they will continue to try to help that person even if the person isn't interested in their help. Another way you might be able to tell that you're codependent is if you have control issues. So what do I mean by that? Well, anything that we can control will help us to feel safe and secure in general, right? But if you live in constant uncertainty and chaos, in a narcissistic relationship, for example, having certain things under your control might limit your ability to take risks and share your feelings. So what do I mean by that? Well, maybe you have like an addiction that you need to, like, you need to drink alcohol or take a sedative or something in order to loosen up or hold your feelings down, or maybe you are a workaholic and you don't, you do that because it helps you to feel in control of everything. Or, as a codependent, maybe you also want to control your children or your spouse, or, because maybe you need other people to behave in a certain way to feel okay, but people pleasing and caretaking, in the case of, say, an inverted narcissist, is often used to control and manipulate them. And, of course, some codependents will be bossy and tell you what you should and shouldn't do, and that's a violation of someone else's boundary. Typically, I think, in my opinion, the controlling sort of codependent personality looks more like a narcissist than an empath. Um, just my opinion. All right. And the same thing, with the dysfunctional communication. This is kind of the darker side of codependency, or one of them. And that is because if you're dealing with a lack of communication in your relationship, you might find yourself being incredibly frustrated. Like me, when I was going through my narcissistic abuse in the couple of different times in my life that it happened, I found myself incredibly frustrated that I could not communicate with people who seemed intelligent enough, and yet they couldn't seem to comprehend the very simple things I was telling them. And I thought, how is this so difficult? I communicate for a living. You know what I'm saying? How is this even a thing? But it was a thing. So, but what happens is that, as on the empath side, on the victim side, on the survivor side, you become afraid to be truthful. You become afraid of saying what you really think, because you know it will upset the narcissist. And so instead of saying, you know what, I really don't like something that you're doing, you're probably going to be like, okay, well, I guess it's okay, because if I don't say anything, then you won't be mad at me. And you spend your whole life thinking, please don't be mad at me. Please don't be mad at me, because when they're mad at you, the bad things start to happen, right? Communication in a toxic relationship in general, in a codependent relationship, becomes dishonest and it becomes confusing. And so when you try to manipulate the other person out of just fear, it's ugly. And so the narcissist tries to manipulate you, and then you in turn may try to manipulate back, just in an effort to keep everything even keel. You see what I'm saying? It's no good. All right, now let's talk about obsessions. Okay, so when you are dealing with being a codependent person, you have a tendency to spend time really obsessing about things that you don't need to, like other people, different relationships, maybe even your job, maybe, various things. Maybe the fact that somebody looks prettier than you, or more handsome than you, or whatever. This is caused by your own dependency on the narcissist and other people for your own identity. And it's also caused by your own anxieties and fears. Okay. So maybe you might become obsessed if you think you made a mistake. Maybe you can sometimes find yourself being in a big fantasy world, and maybe you wish things could be that way, but or maybe you fantasize about someone that you love being a different way to avoid feeling what you're feeling right now. Or maybe you just kind of space out. This is one way that you can stay in denial. To avoid the pain of the present is to obsess about something that doesn't really matter. Okay. It's a way you can stay in denial, and that's one of my next signs. Okay, denial. So when you are in a situation where you're dealing with an abuser and you're codependent, you're going to be in denial. You're not going to believe that you really are codependent necessarily, at least not until you're ready to, and you are going to think the problem isn't really about you, it's really about the other person. Now, is it your fault that the person you're with is a narcissist? Absolutely not. But is it your responsibility to stand up for yourself and take your life back right now? Maybe. I think that depends on what you consider your own responsibility. But the fact is that, certainly the problem could be someone else. It could be the narcissist. And if you're the narcissist, you might be in denial about your own codependency. Okay. But usually when they think someone else, they whoever the codependent happens to be tends to continue to complain or trying to fix the other person, or going from one relationship to another and then one job to another, and never really owning up to the fact that they have a problem. This type of denial usually comes from the narcissist, but can also come from the survivor. Okay? They will continue to complain, they will continue, and they deny, on the flip side, their own feelings and needs. So, where the narcissist of the codependent type will tend to try to fix the other situation, try to fix the problem that isn't themselves. The empath who is broken and in a narcissistic relationship will often go the other way and stay focused on the needs of others. Do you see what I'm saying? And so they will pay attention to other people's needs, not their own. They will be in denial about their own need for space, autonomy, etc. And while codependents will sometimes appear to be very needy, other codependents actually act the opposite of that. They act very self sufficient and they will never ask for help. So you can kind of guess which side those both fall on, can't you? Those two symptoms. But most of the time, the empath won't always reach out for trouble, and they or reach out for help, and they'll have trouble taking any help that you can offer because they feel in denial of their vulnerability and their need for intimacy. Yeah. We all deserve to be loved, people. We all deserve to be loved, and there's no reason that we can't. Okay? Here's another thing. We, as codependents, survivors, we tend to need other people to like us to feel okay about ourselves. But what's interesting is, so does a narcissist, just in a different way. We're all afraid of being rejected or abandoned. And that's kind of what glues us together in the first place, in my opinion. But even if we can function on our own, it's not about the fact that we can't do things for ourselves. It's about the fact that some of us feel lonely or depressed if we're alone for too long. Do you know what I'm saying? For me, I mostly feel okay with that, but I guess if I was alone for too long, it would become very depressing. And I remember long periods of time in my life where I was alone, physically and otherwise, and I certainly remember going through depression. Anytime, in my opinion, anytime you have too much time to think, you can think yourself into a depression. So get busy and do something. Um, but that trait makes it hard for anyone to end a relationship, healthy or otherwise, and that for those of us who have been codependent, that tends to be true even when the relationship is painful or abusive, and then we end up feeling trapped. Feel me? All right. All right. And, two more things in my list today. Okay. Problems with intimacy. Well, I ain't talking about sex, but sexual issues are definitely a reflection of an intimacy problem for a codependent couple, as it were. I'm talking about being open and mentally, emotionally close with someone. Okay. Because you have weak boundaries, because you might feel ashamed, because the narcissist is so happy to walk all over your boundaries. You might be consistently afraid of being judged, rejected, or left. And ironically, so is the narcissist in many cases, but the narcissist will also tend to go toward feeling smothered in a relationship and feeling like they've lost their autonomy. But then again, if you display those symptoms, they'll usually flip on you and go the other way. It's exhausting. So you might deny your need for closeness as a codependent person, and you might feel like your partner wants too much of your time. And then that can also flip back and forth between narcissist and victim, because sometimes your partner, will also complain you're unavailable, but then they will deny their own need for separateness, or vice versa, deny your need for separateness. See? And my final, symptom that you're a codependent today is painful emotions, which, what does that mean? Well, when you're in a codependent, toxic relationship, you are going to be feeling a lot of stress, and you're going to feeling a lot of just general emotional pain. Okay, you're going to feel low self-esteem, you're going to have shame. All these things are going to lead to you having serious anxiety, serious fear about, like I said, being abandoned, fears of abandonment, fears of being rejected, fears of not being good enough, fear that you'll make a mistake, fear that you're going to fail, fear of you're going to be trapped too hard, or you're going to be alone. It's like this ongoing cycle. The other symptoms, of course, you know, will make you feel angry eventually. You might feel resentful. You might get depressed or hopeless. You might feel numb. I used to joke that I was comfortably numb. You ain't never comfortably numb, my friend. You're not. But you know what? Here's the good news, okay? If you are codependent and you want to change, you can change. Of course, your very first step is to get some support. All right. So if you haven't already got a group near you, you can check into, actually, there's a group I think called Codependence Anonymous you can look into. If you're looking for online support, you can go to my SPAN group. It is free to join and quite a supportive, wonderful group of people full of survivors and a wonderful team of admins who is very supportive and involved. So, and they really care, and it just does my heart a world of good, you guys. You don't even know. But anyway, so that's it. You can learn more about SPAN at queenbeing.com/SPAN. All right. I have so much more to say on this topic. I think I'm going to need to do a little series about it because I've already gone way overboard today with my long video. I apologize for that. But thank you guys so much for being here and listening, and thanks for letting me be a part of your life and a part of your day. Let me ask you one question before I go. Are you or have you been in a codependent relationship? Is there anything you'd like to share with me about that? And are there any specific questions that you have regarding codependency that you'd like me to answer in a future video? Leave your thoughts and your comments below, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a wonderful day, guys. It's my mission to teach others what I know to be true. You really can create the life you want. Take care of your body, take care of your soul, nurture the real you, and introduce him or her to the world. Be comfortable in your own skin and in your place in this world. Take your spot, take it now, and the universe will take its cue from you. You feel me? If so, subscribe to my channel. Let's get it done together.